What do you go by? What are your aliases?
Philip. My name is Philip Amos. I go by Phil to most of my friends. But some people call me T-Bone, which is the alias I use for booking shows. Literally no reasoning behind that nickname. It's just always been.
All right. And what bands are you in?
I'm in Gum, and I'm in The Few, and formerly been in a bunch of other bands. I was in a band called Strength of Our Remains. I've been in Hard Way Out. Yeah, list goes on and on and on. But currently in Gum and The Few.
And how long have you been going to shows for?
About 12 years. My first show was fall semester of my freshman year of high school in 2011. So I think like 12-ish years.
What was the early days of hardcore for you?
First show I ever went to in 2011 was downtown Chat at a venue called The Warehouse. And it was Under Oath, Comeback Kid, The Chariot, and This Is Hell. And I was there for The Chariot. I was a huge fan of The Chariot. It's like the first heavy-ish band I was ever into. And they were kind of my gateway just into the alternative or aggressive music world in general. But shortly after that show, the Warehouse downtown ended up closing. And so the Chattanooga scene, as far as all ages shows, was kind of in a weird place for a while. But after a year or so, a venue in North Georgia in like Ringgold, right before off the Cloud Springs exit, called Cloud Springs Deli, started doing shows. And some of my most formative experiences going to shows were there. But it was kind of feast or famine when I was first coming along. There wasn't a lot of options as far as hardcore shows specifically.
If not now, what would be the golden age of Chattanooga hardcore?
If not now is the golden age, in my opinion. But if not now, honestly, I would say this is before my time. But when Sluggos was active as an all-ages venue, there was hardcore shows nearly every week.
How much has the scene changed since you've been around, and do you think it's been in a good or bad direction?
It has changed tremendously for good. When I was first booking shows, playing in bands, going to shows, 50 people was like a massive turnout. And now it's like 50 people is just the bare minimum worst show turnout. You know, I mean, post-pandemic, first show I booked, ended in Shackled at Knights of Columbus on North Shore. I thought it was going to be like 50 people because that's what I was used to, and it did 180 people on a Tuesday. So it was like, just blew my mind. Attendance post-pandemic has been like unprecedented because I was booking shows for almost 4 or 5 years before the pandemic hit, and like I said, 50 people. I mean, I booked Drain at the spot on Main Street, and there's 55 paid. Like, you know, now they're selling out venues. They sell out like every show they do on tour, you know. But that's just a look into like how the scene was pre-pandemic as to now. So.
Yeah. So speaking of the pandemic, how did it affect like the scene?
Well, there was no scene, you know. I mean, like, I had a bunch of shows booked that I was excited about. Namely, like, I had a Creeping Death show booked. I was talking with an agent and working on booking Queensway and Year of the Knife, getting some decent offers, and then of course everything shut down. So it was like, you know, there wasn't a scene, and a lot of uncertainty, like with everything. You know, I was out of work, just sitting at home, no shows, nothing to go to, and I was kind of convinced that that drop off would just kill the hardcore scene in Chattanooga forever.
So what do you think is like the definitive Chattanooga hardcore scene, or Chattanooga hardcore band?
It's a good question.
Personally, I would say Gum. But...
Well, see, I can't say that. But
yeah.
The interesting thing about Chat is that there's straight up not a Chattanooga hardcore sound. Every band that we've ever had has been drastically different. Like, I think about Relapse, which was a band in like 2014 to 2016. And that was like crushingly heavy sound, like 7-string guitars, right? But then I think about a band like Late Night Rage, which is more from the like 2006, 2009 era, which was like straight up just hardcore punk, no frills, you know. There's just a very broad spectrum of bands that we produce, and unfortunately a lot of them have always flew under the radar in terms of the regional and national scene.
So I think you already mentioned this a little bit, but how did you get into the hardcore scene?
Honestly, so I'd gotten into aggressive music or like alternative music through skate videos. I've been a skateboarder since I was like 11, 12. So I was just hearing like punk bands and stuff in that context, in those videos. And that just led me down a YouTube rabbit hole. So I'm just like, all right, I'm listening to Misfits on YouTube. One day I come across Minor Threat. It's like, okay, I'm listening to Minor Threat on YouTube. One day I come across Bad Brains. And there's kind of just a snowball from there. My oldest brother used to go to like heavier shows in town. He'd go to like Warped Tour every year. You know, he'd go to like the bigger package, like heavy shows in town. Kind of not really worried if it was like hardcore or not. He just like liked aggressive music, right? And some of the earliest bands he put me on to I hated, but then he showed me this band, The Chariot, and that was kind of like this very chaotic, heavy band. And I got obsessed with them, and at the same time I'm getting obsessed with the like proto-hardcore stuff from my YouTube deep dives, like Minor Threat, Bad Brains, etc. And then those worlds kind of meshed, and then that's when I started looking out further and finding bands like Terror, Backtrack, you know, Harm's Way, like that snowball, kind of the era the era of hardcore I grew up in, which was like 2014 to 2016. You know, got deeply involved in that world, but ultimately back in the day, like to go to a straight up hardcore show when I was like 16, you had to drive out of town. And that's one of the reasons that me and my friends started booking, because it was like, no one's booking hardcore in town, and no one's booking all ages hardcore in town. So we have to bring it here, you know. Basically, how would I get into hardcore? Skate videos and YouTube is pretty much the simple answer.
All right, so what are some of your hallmark hardcore bands?
You mean like my favorites?
Yeah, just like all time, not necessarily Chattanooga, just hardcore bands in general.
Terror is like my favorite band of all time, pretty much. I think they're the GOAT. It's in terms of modern hardcore. Minor Threat was the band that truly propelled me deep into the culture. It's the reason I'm straight edge to this day. And I think I personally think the most influential hardcore band across the board in the whole history of hardcore is Minor Threat. Foundation, which was a straight edge band from Atlanta. It's hard to say. I mean, like that's like the holy trinity for me when it comes to like my personal experience with hardcore. If I had to throw one more band out there, I'd probably you got to go with Bad Brains. That style and that influence can't be understated.
And you mentioned that you are straight edge, and so what inspired you to become straight edge, and what does it mean to you?
Well, I heard Minor Threat when I was 14. At that point, I was in high school, and I was just getting really tired of, I don't know, I've never liked, let's say, mainstream things, right? Which sounds pretentious and stupid, but I'm in the locker room, and everyone just wants to talk about, you know, how drunk they got or how messed up they got on drugs the weekend before. And I was getting really tired of that sort of stuff. And this is also coupled with familial experiences of certain distant relatives of mine that have unfortunately been alcoholics, been drug addicts. And when I found Minor Threat, it was kind of just this moment that made sense to me, where I was like, the answer is not, I'm going to dabble and see what I like. The answer is, I just want no part of it at all. And I've been straight edge for 12 years, and I have no regrets in it at all. I mean, you know, I've seen friends and family destroy their lives because of alcoholism, because of drug addiction, and it's just always been me on the outside saying, thank God I'm straight edge, because it's a constant that you can give yourself in life, that you'll always be aware of your surroundings. You'll always be in control of your self and your emotions, and you won't have an influence that's dictating your choices in life. And that's why I think it's good to be straight edge, as well as we have a culture that is fixated on escapism. for a multitude of issues. I mean, obviously, you look at the world, and the issues are endless. Our culture is fixated on escapism because it's the easier route, right? It's the comfortable route to say, you know, you watch the news, you look at the world outside, and you're like, I can't handle this, so I'm going to numb my senses to dull the pain, right? Or you can choose to be in touch with that reality and understand that that's the way the world works, and unfortunately, that's the way the world is. But you're not going to help yourself by just numbing the pain and refusing to accept reality for what it is. That's another reason why I think straight edge is a great thing. And also, like, you talk about consumerism in America and the fact that there's pharmaceutical executives and alcohol executives sitting behind a desk that love the fact that your uncle's an alcoholic. They love the fact that the person on the street can't live without the drugs that they're producing in mass because they're making endless profits on it without any recourse for the broken families and broken homes they've caused. So straight edge in another way is an act of war against those institutions, because you are saying, I'm not buying your product. You know, I resist, I stand up against that. Even if it's a passive way of doing so, it is still a way of standing up to those forces and their influence on the culture at large.
Okay, so what would you do if you found out that your theoretical child was going to hardcore shows and like the kind of shows that you play and go to?
Oh, that's a great question. Thought about this a lot. I think I'd be stoked on it. However, one of the things I think is true of parent and child is that the child is always going to want to rebel against the parent. And so I've always just had this feeling that my kids are not going to care at all about punk or hardcore, and probably just going to be into, like, I don't know, soccer or baseball or something, which those are also things I like. You know, if they were to ever get into it, which I don't want to indoctrinate them into it, you know, if they get into it on their own accord, that's them, you know. But if they were to get into it, I would be excited to, you know, show them bands and show them that their old dad used to hang, you know what I'm saying? But yeah, that's a great question. I'd be stoked on it. I'd support it, you know.
And would you rather play a show with 50, 100, or 1,000 people?
100 people in, like, let's say there's 100 people in this room. That's like the best show you can ever play. I've played to all three of those options, and when you have that many people packed in a small room, there's not quite any other experience like it. I think a good example was Gum played at the Dalton Skate Shop recently. There's about 100 people there, and that room's not much bigger than this one that we're sitting in now. And that was one of my favorite sets we've ever played, because it's just everyone's so close up and like grabbing the mic, singing the words. There's no feeling like that. When you play to 1,000 people, usually you're playing a room that has like a barricade. There's a big separation. Of course, it's nice to play to 1,000 people because you're playing to 1,000 people. But there's kind of a separation there that you're missing, that you get with a smaller show. You get that intimacy. So I think 100 people.
How many toddlers do you think you could overpower? just like a base number, like they all spawn at once.
Oh, they all spawn at once. I could probably handle 20 before they start to really take me down.
How has the Memphis rap scene like influenced you? Because I know that you guys have sampled it in your songs before.
Yeah, we actually all love that Memphis rap. In fact, when we're in the van on tour, a lot of times, a few times a week, we're listening to Juicy J, 36 Mafia, Project Pat, like all individually. The decision to sample that song was actually my idea, about to snitch on our sample. I've never done this before. This is exclusive content. I bought a CD for 5 cents at McKay's one time, a rapper called Show from Houston, Texas, S-H-O, Show. The whole record features Willie D of the Ghetto Boys, and I always loved that track. I'm like, this record is now streaming anywhere. You can't find it. You can't find it on Spotify, Apple Music, nothing. So I was like, yo, we should throw in this little part at the end of the song, just because like no one's gonna catch us. No one knows what this is. You know, we all love it. I mean, does it influence our music? No, but we all do love it, being from Tennessee, that Memphis sound, that's something we always love. So yeah,
And do you prefer playing 21 plus shows or all ages shows?
all ages, all the time. I would never play an age-restricted show again if I had the choice. Unfortunately, sometimes it's inevitable, but all ages, hardcore is all ages. Period. I fight really hard to make sure all my shows are all ages, and if you ever see me announce a show that's not all ages, you'll notice that my name is not on the flyer. It won't say T-Bone Presents.
So what is your favorite venue in Chattanooga?
Honestly, I love doing shows at Poor Taste just because of the size of the room, straightforwardness of the room, I think it's a great vibe for doing hardcore specifically. So yeah, I gotta say Poor Taste. I gotta shout out Poor Taste.
And if you could change anything about the Chattanooga hardcore scene, what would it be?
The fact that there's so few bands should have like 30 bands willing to hop on shows. Like, we got a lot of people coming to shows. We got to get more people starting bands, and also more people booking shows because I'm tired and I need a break.